dogs.
I wish I had some great story about how a moose attacked my team, but I just fell asleep.
Oh, yeah?
I nodded off and caught a snow snake, and I went flying. And
oh, you did?
Yeah. I yelled for them to whoa, and they almost stopped it. They said, nope, we know where Ruby is.
Got to strap yourself in next time. A few fellow mushers gave him a lift, though, to the checkpoint, and he eventually met up with his dog team in the Alaskan city of Ruby. A couple of Chinese basketball fans are spreading their love of the game across the globe. Two engineering students at the University of Dayton in Ohio call highlights at the Flyers game so that alumni back in China can hear along with them. Dana Jacobson has more.
The University of Dayton Flyers are currently the top-ranked team in the Atlantic 10 Conference. When international students arrive on campus, they quickly find out that basketball is a part of life there in Dayton. And now the basketball team is making its game more accessible to those international students. It's a familiar scene. A sold-out game at Ohio's University of Dayton Arena. The exuberant home crowd celebrates the spectacle that is college basketball. The band, the cheerleaders, the face-painted fans. But courtside, you'll also find the unexpected. A pair of student sportscasters calling the action for fans halfway around the world.
I think UD want to introduce our basketball to more people, not only in the United States, but back in China. So I just feel like really excited.
Shu Yingxi and Yiqing Zhou are among the university's first foreign language broadcasters.
I felt very excited. And
but also nervous,
yeah,
right?
very nervous.
Yeah.
Up to 1,000 fans from abroad tune in. Yuan-Jo Lin, a Dayton alum, listens on his smartphone from Beijing.
I spent 5 years in Dayton. It's unbelievable, like I still can listen to the game and watch the game when I back to China.
Poised and prepared as they are, Zhou and Xi are not broadcast or communications majors.
Also, we have program in the computer.
They're graduate students studying electrical engineering.
It's like working with some components like lasers.
They're also a couple.
We started dating like 5 years ago. She knows me better than someone else.
Yeah, I know like what kind of mistakes he will make like in the homework, so I will tell him don't do this or something. Yeah.
I like their chemistry. They just have an it factor.
Dayton's assistant athletics director, Michael LaPlaca, recruited Zhou and Xi.
And I'm assuming you don't speak Mandarin, so you had to get somebody in to help you know if they knew what they were talking about.
Absolutely. So I reached out to one of our professors, and he helped with the translation, not just for the knowledge of it, but how do they call a game? You know, are they excited at the right points? Do they know the terminology of basketball?
Listeners abroad can't see the games, only the audio is streamed, and it's not always clear.
Listening to the game is hard to, the signal is not stable.
Still, LaPlaca considers the program, now in its second season, a success.
I think just having that access and that connectivity through the game of basketball, which is just such a shared language, you can't beat it.
Dayton's international students arrive as fans of the game. When they aren't filling seats in the arena, they're competing at the campus rec center.
How did you get interested in basketball?
I think since Yao Ming landed in NBA.
Yao Ming, the first Chinese athlete to become an NBA All-Star, played for 8 seasons with the Houston Rockets starting in 2002. He's also credited for bringing basketball to a generation of Chinese fans.
Yao Ming played in America very, very good. And I think maybe I can come to US to broaden my horizon and to practice my English. Do you think you are very good to fit in the UD Flyer team?
Yes, I feel like I am. Because,
Between practicing English and broadcasting in Mandarin, Zhou and Xi discovered something else in Dayton. A shared love for college basketball.
College basketball game is much more passion than NBA game. And sometimes just one game, that's everything.
Leaves it for Pollard and the dunk!
I love basketball much, yeah. I think we will be the Flyer fans forever.
The Dayton Flyers will play later today in the quarterfinals of the Atlantic 10 tournament against Davidson, and that will be the first postseason game that Joe and she will ever call. Now, Dayton is expected to make the NCAA tournament, which gets underway next week, Anne-Marie, and yes, Joe and she will be calling that game as well.
Wouldn't you like a shorter work week, like maybe, I don't know, 4 days? Sounds like a good thing, right? But trying to cram all your work into just 4 days may actually wreak havoc on your health. So to explain that, we turn to Ohio State professor Allard Demby. You've done a lot of studies on this very topic. So when I read about this, Professor, I gotta say, I wasn't necessarily buying it. It seems like fewer days at work would actually be good for you. But having a 3-day weekend could actually be bad?
A 3-day weekend sounds like a really fine idea to me, and I could see how many people would appreciate having that time on the weekends. I certainly would appreciate having that time. The question is, how do you get the work done, and in what period of time do you get the work done that needs to get accomplished, especially given the fact that some people normally work 40 hours a week, but other people work 45, 50 hours a week. So how is it possible to compress all the work that needs to be done into 4 days without having a price to pay?
So the study sort of looked at longer days. We're not talking about 8-hour days. We're talking about maybe 4 10-hour days. So you actually are still putting in full-time hours just over a shorter period of time.
The studies we did suggest that, okay, so let's start with a standard 40-hour week. So in a standard 40-hour week, you can work 5 days a week and 8 hours a day, and it all works out to be 40 hours. If you're trying to work in a compressed schedule where you have, let's say, 40 hours a week over 4 days, then on average, you'll be working 10 hours shifts. And the research I've done indicates that if it gets a bit higher, up to about 48 hours a week, and you try to compress that into 4 days, that's when our studies have shown that you can potentially get some health effects in the way of fatigue and possibly even effects in diseases.
So what sort of diseases are we talking about? I mean, what are the long-term health implications?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked a lot at the effect of chronic diseases. Of course, we started this research with just industrial accidents. Many years ago, we showed that if a person works more than about 12 hours in a day on average over, let's say, a 5-day period, that can definitely raise the risk of industrial injuries, and that's been shown pretty definitively. And newer studies that we've done show that the same kind of effects might even occur with chronic diseases over a period of time, such as asthma and heart disease and cancer and others. So, I mean, if a person's working 4 days a week at 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, I'm not too worried. But when in order to compress the schedule and so that you can have that 3-day weekend, if you try to compress the schedule into 4 days and work longer hours overall, because you still have to get the work done. Let's say now you're working 48 hours a week, 50 hours a week over 4 days, then those are long days, stressful days, fatiguing days, and possibly could be related with various kinds of injuries and illnesses, as well as potentially chronic disease down the road.
And so having that extra day off, that extra day in the weekend, doesn't help to compensate?
That's a good question. In other words, does the 3-day period at the end of the week and the rest that may occur during that 3 days, can that compensate? It might be an issue of what you're doing during those 3 days. If you're just, still trying to look at your emails, every so often, as I do, or you're trying to fit in other sort of demanding activities during those supposedly open days on the weekends, then maybe you're kidding yourself, and maybe it's still, pretty stressful to try to pull that off.
All right, I hear what you're saying, Professor, but, if you're doing any more studies, I wouldn't mind participating in a little 4-day work week study. I'll email you. Maybe you can write a note to my bosses or something. Professor Allard.